Imagine standing at the foot of a colossal stone staircase nearly 2,500 years ago. The spring sun is rising over the mountains of ancient Persia. Ahead of you, 23 nations are climbing toward the greatest ceremonial city on earth. Armenians carry silver vessels crafted by master artisans. Babylonians bring magnificent textiles. Delegates from India present rare perfumes. Envoys from distant Africa lead exotic animals never before seen by many in the crowd. Every nation of a vast empire has gathered for a single purpose: to honor the King of Kings. For 2 centuries, this extraordinary procession repeated itself every spring, year after year, generation after generation. The city was called Parsa, a place built not merely from stone, but from the cooperation of millions of people spread across 3 continents. It took almost 100 years to create. Its builders believed it would endure forever. They were wrong. Because in 330 BC, after a night of wine, celebration, and vengeance, a single torch changed history. An Athenian woman named Thais stood before the most powerful conqueror in the world, Alexander of Macedon. She challenged him to do something unforgettable, something that would echo through history for more than 2,000 years. Alexander agreed. The torches were lit, the flames spread, and one of the most magnificent cities ever built disappeared into the darkness. But here is the strange irony. The people who built the city never called it Persepolis. That name came from the Greeks, the very civilization that destroyed it. Today, most of us remember this wonder of the ancient world by the language of its conquerors. So how did the ceremonial heart of the Persian Empire rise from an empty plain? Who built it? What really happened on the night it burned? And why does its legacy still survive long after both Persia and Alexander's empire vanished? Tonight we step into ancient Iran, just hours before one of history's greatest tragedies. This is the story of Persepolis, the city that took a century to build and burned in a single night. Imagine standing at the foot of a colossal stone staircase nearly 2,500 years ago. The spring sun is rising over the mountains of ancient Persia. Ahead of you, 23 nations are climbing toward the greatest ceremonial city on earth. Armenians carry silver vessels crafted by master artisans. Babylonians bring magnificent textiles. Delegates from India present rare perfumes. Envoys from distant Africa lead exotic animals never before seen by many in the crowd. Every nation of a vast empire has gathered for a single purpose: to honor the King of Kings. For 2 centuries, this extraordinary procession repeated itself every spring, year after year, generation after generation. The city was called Parsa, a place built not merely from stone, but from the cooperation of millions of people spread across 3 continents. It took almost 100 years to create. Its builders believed it would endure forever. They were wrong. Because in 330 BC, after a night of wine, celebration, and vengeance, a single torch changed history. An Athenian woman named Thais stood before the most powerful conqueror in the world, Alexander of Macedon. She challenged him to do something unforgettable, something that would echo through history for more than 2,000 years. Alexander agreed. The torches were lit, the flames spread, and one of the most magnificent cities ever built disappeared into the darkness. But here is the strange irony. The people who built the city never called it Persepolis. That name came from the Greeks, the very civilization that destroyed it. Today, most of us remember this wonder of the ancient world by the language of its conquerors. So how did the ceremonial heart of the Persian Empire rise from an empty plain? Who built it? What really happened on the night it burned? And why does its legacy still survive long after both Persia and Alexander's empire vanished? Tonight we step into ancient Iran, just hours before one of history's greatest tragedies. This is the story of Persepolis, the city that took a century to build and burned in a single night. For centuries, many people assumed that great ancient monuments could only be built through slavery. Massive stone blocks, gigantic palaces, towering columns. The logic seemed simple. Surely a project of this scale required forced labor. But Persepolis tells a different story, and remarkably, the evidence survived. Not in royal inscriptions, not in epic poems, but in payroll records. In the 1930s, archaeologists from the Oriental Institute of the University of Chicago began excavating the ruins of Persepolis. What they discovered changed our understanding of the city forever. Buried beneath the debris were tens of thousands of clay tablets. At first glance, they seemed unremarkable, small pieces of baked clay covered with writing. But these tablets contain something extraordinary, the daily administrative life of an empire. Written in the Elamite language, the records documented workers, supplies, wages, travel expenses, food distributions, and construction activities. They revealed the names of real people, men and women who lived more than 2,500 years ago. Suddenly, Persepolis was no longer just a collection of ruined stones. It became a city filled with individuals, builders, craftsmen, families, workers whose lives had been preserved in clay. The records describe stonemasons from Persia, decorative artists from Media, brickmakers from Babylon, sculptors from Ionia, metal workers from Egypt. People from across the empire worked side by side. Different languages, different cultures, different religions, united by a single project. Even more surprising was the way they were treated. The tablets repeatedly mentioned payments. Workers received compensation for their labor. Some were paid in grain, others received wine, some received livestock, many received combinations of resources, depending on their profession and responsibilities. The records even reveal a surprisingly sophisticated administrative system. Workers were tracked carefully, travelers received provisions, supervisors recorded attendance and productivity. Nothing suggests a workforce built upon mass slavery. Instead, the evidence points toward organized labor, supported by the state. One discovery particularly impressed modern historians. Several tablets reference women workers, not merely as dependents, not simply as family members, but as active participants in the workforce. Women supervised teams. Women received wages. Women appeared in official records with remarkable regularity. For an ancient society, the level of documentation is extraordinary, and it provides a rare glimpse into everyday life inside the Persian Empire. Some tablets even record special rations for mothers who had recently given birth, additional grain, additional wine, additional support during recovery. The records are so detailed that they feel surprisingly modern. You can almost imagine clerks sitting in offices, calculating distributions and recording transactions line by line. The city was not simply built by workers. It was managed by one of the most advanced administrative systems of the ancient world. Meanwhile, valuable materials continued arriving from every corner of the empire. The construction project became a physical representation of Persian power. Cedar wood traveled from the forests of Lebanon. Its fragrance filled the workshops where craftsmen prepared beams for royal buildings. Gold arrived from Lydia and distant Bactria. Precious stones crossed deserts and mountains. Lapis lazuli came from Central Asia. Turquoise arrived from Eastern territories. Each shipment represented another piece of the empire, contributing to a common vision. Imagine the roads leading toward Persepolis, caravans stretching across the horizon, thousands of animals carrying stone, timber, metal, and luxury goods. Merchants speaking dozens of languages, workers unloading materials destined for royal palaces. Every shipment transformed the city. Every delivery brought Darius's dream closer to reality. And beneath it all was a powerful idea. Persepolis was not intended to celebrate a single nation. It was designed to showcase the entire empire. Its builders came from 23 satrapies. Its materials came from 3 continents. Its workforce reflected the incredible diversity of Persian rule. For decades, construction continued. Generation after generation contributed their skills. Children grew up and joined projects started by their parents. Master craftsmen trained apprentices who would finish work begun long before they were born. The city slowly evolved into something extraordinary. Not merely a royal residence, not merely an administrative center, but a monumental symbol of cooperation on a scale rarely seen in human history. The irony is impossible to ignore. Many ancient monuments celebrated military victories. Persepolis celebrated participation. Its walls were not covered with scenes of destruction. Its greatest artworks depicted delegates arriving peacefully from every corner of the empire. The message was clear. Persian power came not only from conquest, it came from organization, from administration, from the ability to unite diverse peoples beneath a shared system. And as decades passed, the city continued to grow. New halls emerged, new palaces rose from the platform, new monuments reached toward the sky. By the time Xerxes inherited the throne, the foundations of Persepolis had been firmly established, but the most magnificent structures were still ahead. The city that Darius imagined was about to become one of the most breathtaking architectural achievements of the ancient world. Under Xerxes, Persepolis would finally reveal its full grandeur. When Xerxes inherited the throne after the death of Darius, he inherited more than an empire. He inherited a dream. A dream carved into stone. A dream that had already consumed decades of labor. A dream that would become one of the greatest architectural achievements of the ancient world. Xerxes was determined to finish what his father had begun, and under his rule, Persepolis finally became the ceremonial capital Darius had envisioned. Imagine approaching the city from the west. The vast platform rises above the plain. The mountain of mercy towers behind it. The morning sun casts long shadows across limestone walls. Before you stands a monumental staircase, wide, elegant. Unlike the steep staircases of many ancient cities, these steps are shallow and gradual, designed so that nobles, diplomats, and even horse riders could ascend with dignity. Every detail was intentional. Persepolis was designed to impress long before visitors reached its gates. At the top stands one of the most famous structures in the Persian world, the Gate of All Nations. This was Xerxes' statement to the world, a declaration that every people of the empire was welcome to enter, not as equals to the king, but as valued participants in the imperial system. The gate formed a massive square hall. Its roof rested on enormous columns that dominated the skyline. Visitors passing beneath them would instantly feel small. But it was the guardians that truly captured attention. At the entrance stood colossal lamassu, gigantic winged bulls with human heads, each carved from a single block of stone. Their muscular bodies symbolized strength. Their wings represented divine protection. Their human faces conveyed intelligence and wisdom. To ancient visitors, these were not merely decorations. They were supernatural protectors, watching over the empire. As travelers passed between them, they entered a world designed to inspire awe. Above the entrances, inscriptions appeared in 3 languages: Old Persian, Elamite, Babylonian. The message was unmistakable. Xerxes proclaimed that these magnificent structures existed by the grace of Ahura Mazda, the supreme god of the Persian world. Beyond the gate, the city opened before you. Palaces, courtyards, monumental halls, columns stretching toward the sky. But one structure dominated them all: the Apadana, the great audience hall, the beating heart of Persepolis. The scale is difficult to comprehend. The building covered approximately 12,000 square meters, nearly the size of 2 modern soccer fields. Its roof rested upon 72 gigantic columns, each standing 24 meters high, equivalent to an 8-story building. Imagine entering such a hall. The cedar roof soaring overhead, sunlight filtering through openings high above, gold decorations reflecting warm light across polished surfaces. The atmosphere would have felt almost otherworldly, a place built to overwhelm the senses. The columns themselves were masterpieces. Long fluted shafts rose from stone bases. At their tops sat enormous capitals, double-headed bulls, majestic lions, powerful eagles. Each carved with astonishing precision. each weighing several tons, each serving as both engineering and art. Today, only 14 columns remain standing, yet even these surviving giants leave visitors speechless. Now imagine all 72. The sight would have been unforgettable, a forest of stone unlike anything else in the ancient world. And the Apadana was only the beginning. To the east stood another extraordinary structure, the throne hall, often called the Hall of 100 Columns. Started by Xerxes and completed by his successors, it was among the largest roofed spaces ever constructed in antiquity. This was where military leaders reported to the king, where governors arrived from distant provinces, where the authority of the empire was displayed in its most formal form. Massive stone doorways surrounded the hall. Reliefs showed kings confronting mythical creatures, scenes that symbolized order triumphing over chaos. Every carving communicated a message. The empire was strong. The empire was stable. The empire was protected by divine favor. Nearby stood the private palace of Darius, carefully designed to capture sunlight during the winter months. Higher still rose the palace of Xerxes. From its terraces, the king could survey the entire ceremonial complex. And beyond them all stood one of the most important buildings in Persepolis, the treasury. Here the wealth of the empire accumulated: gold, silver, jewels, fine textiles, exotic gifts from distant lands. Tribute from 23 satrapies flowed into these storage halls, year after year, generation after generation. The treasury became one of the richest places on earth, a physical representation of Persian prosperity. Water flowed through the city by means of ingenious underground channels known as qanats, a Persian innovation that would spread throughout the Middle East and survive for thousands of years. Everything worked together: engineering, art, religion, politics, architecture. Persepolis was more than a city. It was a carefully designed stage. A place where power could be displayed, where loyalty could be celebrated, where the entire empire could witness its own greatness. And once every year, that stage would host a spectacle unlike anything else in the ancient world. A celebration that united 23 nations beneath a single crown. A festival whose spirit still survives today. Its name was Nowruz. And every spring, the world came to Persepolis. Persepolis was never intended to be an ordinary city. It was not a place where merchants crowded narrow streets every day. It was not an administrative capital like Babylon. It was not a military stronghold filled with soldiers. Persepolis existed for something much greater, one extraordinary moment each year: the arrival of Nowruz, the Persian New Year. For more than 3,000 years, Nowruz has marked the spring equinox, the moment when day and night stand in perfect balance, the moment when winter releases its grip and life returns to the world. For the ancient Persians, this was not merely a change of seasons. It was a cosmic event, a reminder that light ultimately triumphs over darkness, order triumphs over chaos, truth triumphs over falsehood. These ideas lay at the heart of Zoroastrian belief. The dominant religion of the Persian Empire, at its center stood Ahura Mazda, the wise lord, the supreme deity who represented wisdom, truth, and justice. Sacred fires burned continuously in temples throughout the empire. Their flames symbolized purity. Their light represented divine presence. Nowruz celebrated this eternal victory, the renewal of both nature and society. And nowhere was that celebration more spectacular than at Persepolis. Every spring, representatives from across the empire began their journey toward Parsa. Some traveled for weeks, others traveled for months. Caravans crossed deserts. Ships carried goods along distant coastlines. Messengers rode across mountains. Delegations moved steadily toward the ceremonial heart of the empire. Imagine arriving in the year 450 BC. The sun rises above the mountain of Mercy. Golden light spreads across the limestone platform. The city glows against the morning sky. You are a member of the Armenian delegation. Your craftsmen have prepared magnificent silver vessels, each decorated with elegant griffin handles, each intended as a gift for the King of Kings. Ahead of you walk Babylonian envoys. They carry finely woven textiles. Their colorful robes sway with every step. Nearby, Indian representatives transport rare perfumes and exotic goods. Their gifts have traveled thousands of kilometers to reach Persepolis. Behind them come delegates from distant Africa, leading rare animals unfamiliar to many in the crowd, creatures that inspire curiosity and wonder. 23 nations, 23 cultures, 23 different traditions, all ascending together. The scene is so important that Persian artists carve it into stone. Even today, visitors can still see these processions preserved on the staircases of the Apadana. Each delegation is shown with remarkable dignity. No chains, no scenes of violence, no images of humiliation. Instead, the reliefs emphasize cooperation, order, respect, participation. The message is subtle but powerful. The empire functions because many peoples contribute to its success. As the delegations pass through the Gate of All Nations, they enter the heart of Persepolis, the Apadana. The vast hall is filled with thousands of people. Columns rise like giant trees above the crowd. Golden decorations reflect sunlight across the interior. The scent of incense drifts through the air. Musicians perform on flutes and lyres. Voices echo beneath the cedar roof. The atmosphere is unlike anything else in the ancient world. At the far end of the hall sits the King of Kings, elevated upon a magnificent throne, surrounded by attendants, nobles, and guards. One by one, the delegations approach. They kneel, they present their gifts. The king acknowledges each offering. But something remarkable happens next. The exchange is not one-sided. The king gives gifts in return. Jewelry, fine fabrics, royal favors, symbols of mutual obligation. This is not simple taxation, it is ceremonial reciprocity, a public demonstration of the relationship between ruler and subject. The empire receives loyalty. The empire offers honor and protection. Outside, celebrations continue throughout the city. The greatest feasts of the year are about to begin. Thousands gather around enormous banquet tables. Royal cooks prepare dishes from across the empire. Recipes from Egypt, spices from India, ingredients from Africa and Central Asia. The aromas fill the air. Roasted meats, fresh bread, sweet fruits, exotic seasonings. Ancient writers later describe Persian cuisine as among the most sophisticated in the world. Royal chefs constantly experimented with new combinations and flavors. The celebrations are not reserved only for nobles. Records indicate that workers also receive additional rations: wine, grain, meat. The prosperity of the empire is shared, at least during these special days of celebration. For 2 centuries, the pattern repeats. Every spring, every generation. Delegations arrive, gifts are exchanged, feasts are held. The empire renews itself. Persepolis becomes the physical symbol of Persian unity, the place where 23 nations gather beneath one crown. Few cities in human history have ever represented such a vast and diverse world. Yet even at the height of its glory, danger was approaching, far beyond the western horizon. A young king was rising, a conqueror whose ambitions would change the ancient world forever. Within a few decades, he would march into Persia, shatter the empire, seize its treasures, and stand inside the halls of Persepolis. His name was Alexander. And the greatest city in Persia was about to face its final chapter. For nearly 200 years, Persepolis stood as the ceremonial heart of the Persian Empire. Its palaces glittered beneath the sun, its treasury overflowed with wealth, its halls welcomed representatives from across the known world. Then came Alexander. In 334 BC, a 22-year-old king crossed the Hellespont and entered Asia. Few could have imagined what would follow. Alexander of Macedon was ambitious, brilliant, relentless. His army moved with astonishing speed. His tactics repeatedly outmatched larger Persian forces. One victory followed another. First came Granicus, then Issus, then the decisive battle at Gaugamela. At each encounter, the Persian Empire lost more of its strength. At each encounter, Alexander grew closer to becoming master of Asia. King Darius III attempted to resist, but defeat followed defeat. Eventually, he fled. The empire that had dominated the world for generations began to collapse. Babylon surrendered. Susa surrendered. One by one, the great centers of Persian power fell into Alexander's hands. Then, in January 330 BC, he arrived at Persepolis. The city did not fight. There was no great siege, no dramatic battle beneath its walls. Tiridates, keeper of the royal treasury, opened the gates and handed Alexander the keys. The ceremonial capital of Persia was now his. As Alexander entered the city, he encountered something unexpected. Along the road, he found hundreds of Greek artisans, men who had been mutilated and permanently marked during Persian captivity. The sight horrified him. Alexander ordered gifts and support for the survivors, but the experience hardened his feelings toward Persia. A seed of anger took root. For the next 3 months, his army occupied Persepolis. The soldiers enjoyed luxuries they had never imagined. They slept in royal palaces. They feasted in magnificent halls. They walked beneath cedar ceilings imported from Lebanon. And most importantly, they emptied the treasury. Gold, silver, jewels, luxury goods accumulated over generations. Ancient sources describe it as one of the greatest concentrations of wealth ever gathered in a single place. The amount was staggering. Thousands of animals were required to transport the treasure away from the city. Yet one question remained unanswered. What should Alexander do with Persepolis itself? Should he preserve it? After all, he now claimed to be successor to the Persian kings, the new ruler of Asia, the new king of kings. Or should he destroy it as revenge for the Persian invasion of Greece generations earlier? The answer would emerge during a night of celebration, a night filled with wine, music, triumph, and poor judgment. Sometime during April or May of 330 BC, Alexander hosted a grand banquet in the palace of Xerxes. The atmosphere was electric. The richest city in the world had fallen. The greatest empire on earth had been conquered. Generals drank heavily, musicians performed, dancers entertained the guests. Among those present was a woman named Thais. She was not merely a companion. She was intelligent, educated, influential. Thais was closely associated with Ptolemy, one of Alexander's most trusted commanders, the man who would later become ruler of Egypt. At some point during the feast, she rose to speak. The room fell silent. She reminded the gathering of something deeply rooted in Greek memory. More than a century earlier, Persian armies under Xerxes had invaded Greece. Athens had burned. Temples on the Acropolis had been destroyed. Thais proposed an unforgettable act of revenge. Let the palace of the Persian kings burn. Let the conquerors repay history. Let Greece answer the flames of Athens with flames of its own. The guests erupted in approval. Fueled by wine and victory, the mood became impossible to resist. Alexander agreed. A torch was lit, then another, then dozens more. The revelers formed a procession through the palace complex, singing, laughing, celebrating. Their destination was deliberate: the palace of Xerxes, the symbolic center of Persian imperial power. Alexander carried a torch. Thais followed close behind. Then the fire began. The cedar beams that had been imported from Lebanon generations earlier ignited almost immediately. Dry timber became fuel. Flames raced across ceilings. Smoke filled the halls. The fire spread from room to room. The palace of Xerxes became an inferno. Soon the destruction expanded beyond a single building. The Apadana caught fire. Other structures followed. Parts of the treasury collapsed. Stone columns survived. Wood did not. For days, the city burned. Roofs crashed down. Decorations vanished in smoke. Centuries of craftsmanship disappeared before the eyes of those who had conquered it. When archaeologists excavated Persepolis more than 2,000 years later, they discovered thick layers of ash. Black scorch marks still stained the stone, silent evidence of that terrible night. Ancient historians disagree about what happened. Some describe the fire as deliberate revenge. Others portray it as a drunken mistake. The truth may lie somewhere in between. The desire for revenge certainly existed, but the destruction itself appears to have been fueled by emotion, alcohol, and a moment that spiraled beyond control. According to later accounts, Alexander eventually regretted his decision. Perhaps he realized he had not merely destroyed a palace, he had destroyed a symbol, a monument built by generations of workers from across the empire. A city that represented cooperation as much as power, a city that had taken a century to build, and only a single night to burn. When the flames finally died, the ceremonial heart of Persia was gone. Persepolis slowly faded into legend. Its palaces collapsed, its halls disappeared beneath dust and stone. Its story survived only in scattered memories. Then, more than 2,000 years later, archaeologists uncovered the truth. They revealed a city built not by slaves, but by skilled workers from across an empire. A city where 23 nations gathered in peace every spring. A city designed to celebrate unity as much as power. Today, the surviving columns still rise above the plains of Iran. The lamassu still guard the ancient gateways. The reliefs still preserve the faces of people who lived 25 centuries ago. The black burn marks remain visible on the stone. Scars left by the night, Persepolis burned. Yet the most important thing survived. Not the palaces, not the treasury, not the throne. The idea. Every spring, hundreds of millions of people still celebrate Nowruz, the same festival once celebrated on this magnificent platform, the same triumph of light over darkness. Alexander's empire fragmented soon after his death, but the spirit of Persepolis endured. Because fire can destroy wood, fire can destroy stone, but it cannot destroy an idea whose time has come. If you enjoyed this journey into the lost world of ancient Persia, let me know in the comments. Which ancient city should we reconstruct next? And if you're fascinated by the rise and fall of lost civilizations, don't forget to subscribe and join us for the next journey through history.